Scouts, welcome to the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium in Dubuque, Iowa. We're part museum, part science center, and part aquarium. My name's Jennifer, and today we are going to go learn about some of the awesome habitats found up and down the Mississippi River. Let's go! This is our American kestrel. I don't know if you just heard him twitter there. It's pretty cute. Kestrels are found up and down the Mississippi River. They're one of our most common falcons here in North America. And falcons are what we consider a migratory bird. So what that means is that falcons have one part of the country where they like to spend their breeding season, where they have their babies, and they actually move to a different part of the country for the winter, primarily so that they can find food. Birds move in response to food availability. In North America, we have four main highways that birds use to move from one point to another. Along the Mississippi River, we are part of the Mississippi Flyway. Approximately 325 different species use this flyway to move from their breeding grounds to their wintering grounds. Our Mississippi Flyway makes up a massive area. It's going to include Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, the Midwestern states, but it actually extends all the way from Alaska and northern Canada down into the Gulf of Mexico. So the birds that are using this highway to move from breeding grounds to wintering grounds, they actually will travel that whole distance and sometimes even end up into South America. Birds, as they're migrating, they're looking for great spots where they can stop, they can rest, they can spend an evening kind of conserving energy, and more importantly, all these little stopping grounds up and down the Mississippi River provide a lot of animals great spots where they can raise their family, where they can hunt their dinner. So we're going to examine those habitats. Within each habitat, there are a series of plants and animals that create a food chain. We group those plants and animals into three main categories: producers, which are plants; consumers, which are the animals that eat things like other animals or plants; and detritivores, which eat all of the dead things. Let's go meet a few of them now. The base of our food chain is the producer. The producer is a plant that uses the sunlight to make food. Behind me are some great examples of producers, such as this big blue stem grass. I have here an eastern box turtle. This is an example of a consumer. This particular animal loves to eat things like plants and occasionally a large bug. Like most consumers, it's going to be eating plants and other animals. I am holding a crayfish. This is a great example of one of those animals that we call a detritivore. What that means is this animal goes around and eats dead things from the bottom of the river or those wetlands. And that helps actually recycle the nutrients back into the habitat so that our producers or our plants can grow up big and tall and start the whole cycle over again. Here we are at our backwater marsh exhibit. This exhibit actually represents something like a wetland here along the Mississippi River. These habitats are great spots for spotting migratory birds such as waterfowl. Approximately 40% of North American ducks, swans, geese actually use the Mississippi Flyway to move from point A to point B each year. These are areas that are going to have high diversity of animals, high diversity of plants, but they also help us out as people. Habitats like a backwater marsh or a wetland are great at improving water quality of our river systems. These habitats act like a giant sponge. So as those floodwaters come in, that sponge of the wetland can slowly release those waters into the main channel, helping control flood levels over time. The plant roots also actually act as a filter. So as things like pollutants of heavy metals, phosphates, or nitrates come into the system, those plants actually filter it out, and as the water leaves, it's in better condition than when it arrived. This gives a lot of animals great spots to feed, great spots to raise their families. If you look behind me, you'll notice that there's some fallen trees. Places like that are great habitats for fish and turtles and birds to actually have their nests and raise their offspring. When you think of things like the river and the wetlands, humans, we influence them a lot by what we put into our environment. Things like pesticides or rodent poison can actually have a big impact on animals like this barn owl. The barn owl eats about 1,000 mice a year in the wild. So if you are using a rodent poison in your home, you actually could be making the owl sick instead of a rodent. So by being smart about what we put into the environment, we can help a lot of our animals up and down the Mississippi Flyway. Thanks for joining us today at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium in Dubuque, Iowa. Next time you're in town, we would love to show you around campus. In the meantime, adventure on!